Hey everyone, welcome to the Material Tailwind crash course. Material Tailwind is a React UI framework that is based on material design from Google, and it is styled with Tailwind CSS. In one of my previous videos, I have created a crash course on NextUI that is built on top of Tailwind CSS. I will put the link on the description if you are interested. Now there is another UI framework called Material UI. It is also using material design, but to implement the styles, it is using CSS in JS libraries. But this framework, Material Tailwind, is using Tailwind CSS behind the scene. And today I'm going to create a crash course on this framework. It is fairly a new framework. If you go to their documentation, you can use this framework using Create React App, Remix Fit, NextJS, Astro, and so on. You have tons of components, plus you have a customization option. I'm not going to go over all of the components. That would take me a lot of time. Instead, I'm going to show you a few of the components. Then I'll show you how to customize the styles. I'm going to try to keep this video very simple and basic. So without further ado, let's get started. So for this video, I'm going to use NextJS. However, again, you can use any React framework. So let's create a brand new NextJS project with npx create next app, Material Tailwind YT. It's the project name actually. I don't need TypeScript, ESLint yes, obviously Tailwind CSS, source directory yes, FRB yes, no, I don't need any other aliases, and let's wait for it to be done. Alright, so our project is created. Let's go to the project. And we need to install this package. Now let's open our text editor. Let's go to Tailwind config file. We need to add this with empty function and wrap our entire config with that function. So we'll copy this. And let's create a config object. And let's move this object to the config. And let's call the with empty function here and pass the config. And that should be it for the config file. Now there's a problem using this framework with server components. The problem is that all the components that needs some kind of state needs to be a client component, but the component code doesn't have this use client directive, so you cannot use them directly on your server components. I explained these kind of patterns in NextJS app router in another video. I will put the link on the description if you are interested. In order for this library to work properly, we need to create a separate file and export the components from there. So let's create another file inside our app. Let's call it Tailwind.jsx. First add the use client directive. Then you can import the components that you need. For example, the button component from at Material Tailwind /React, and then you export button. And you need to add more components based on your need later down your project. But there is another way you can export all the components so that you don't have to re-add the components over and over again. So just remove this import statement and just type export asterisk from Material Tailwind /React, and this will export all the components from the package. Now let's go to the page.js. I will remove everything from here. Let's add a div. Let's add hello world. and also add a button. Click me, and we need to import the button from mtailwind.jsx file. So import button from /mtailwind. Now we can run our server with yarn dev. Let's go to localhost 3000. And you see hello world text with a button. Actually, I will remove the default styles from NextJS from globals file, globals.css, and I'll remove this default styles. Nice. I will remove the hello world part. So this is our button. I can click on it and you see the ripple effect, just like the material design. If I inspect, I will zoom in for you. You can see a bunch of Tailwind CSS classes are added. And in the console, we don't see any errors, so our setup is working totally fine. So now let's learn about the button component. So let's search for button. Here it is. So this is the button component out of the box, but you can have variants like field, gradient, outline, text. Then you have different sizes, colors, loading state, and so on. So let's see one by one. So you can have a variant using the variant prop like text, field. Field is the default one. Let's add outline or maybe text. I can change color like red. Let's change the variant to field. You can have size. You have SM, MD, LG, MD, I guess the default one. And now we have a bigger button. Then you can have loading state using this loading prop. You can even add icons as children like this. You just put the SVG or any kind of logo. Then you can also add your text. And this is your button. Your button, you can have your button to take the full width of its container, which is called the block level button. You just need to pass full width prop. Now it's taking the full width. And also notice that you can pass class name to the component, and the class name can be any class name, or you can pass Tailwind CSS class names to customize your component. For example, I can pass max width of 32, then margin top 10. Then you can change the radiuses using just Tailwind classes. You can even use buttons as a link. So I will use the NextJS link. href will be /about and link, set button. Go to about. Now if I click on go to about, it should take me to the /about route. But the page doesn't exist, but it's working as a link. You can even disable the ripple effect using the ripple prop and pass it false. I will make the href just a pound sign. And if I click on this button, you see we don't have any ripple effect. To see all the props available for the button or any kind of component, just go to the component page and you'll see the prop section. So here the button prop section, and here you'll see all the props that you can pass, their types, description, and their default values. And if you scroll down, you will see the types that are available for the component, like the color type, size type, variant types, and so on. And if you scroll down more, and here you'll find the button theme customization guide, which I'll go over later in this video. Now let's see the typography component. So the typography component is just a component to render some text. There are many variants available, like the headings or maybe the paragraphs. So let's see them in the code. I will remove all the buttons. And let's also add typography. And let's add a variant of H1. And you see this H1 text. If I inspect this, you see this is a H1 tag. You can add H1 to H6. And now it's an H5 tag. You also have a lead text. So let's add a lot of some text. So this is some lead text. Then you have small. Then a paragraph, which is a little bit bigger than the small version. Then you also have colors. For example, green. Now this guy is green. You will see all the typography props from the props section. Now let's see the dialog component. So the dialog component is just basically a model like this. And you have tons of examples on this dialog page. Using this component is really easy. So let's add a button first. I'll remove this typography component. Then let's create a function, toggle modal, or maybe toggle dialog. And let's pass the function. Let's add the state. Default value being false. And the toggle dialog function will change the state. And let's add a dialog. And let's pass the open prop. Pass is open state. Also add the handler prop. And the handler prop can be also toggle dialog. And in the dialog, you have more components. You have dialog header. Let's say login. You are importing a component that needs useState. Oh, so useState cannot be inside server component. Let's make this component a client component. Though you shouldn't make your page component a client component, but just for demonstration, I'm going to make it a client component. That's fine. If I click on open dialog, now it shows you this model. If I click outside, it closes the model. You can add also dialog footer using the dialog footer component. I've added a button to close the model. And now we have a close button. It closes the model. You also have dialog body. Inside language and text. And now you have your full dialog. So in dialog, you can also add sizes. You have LG, XL, SM, MD, XL, XXL. So let's pass MD. I guess MD is the default. Then you have XL or LG. Notice one thing, that the model is responsive by default. If I increase the width, you see that the model size also increases. And if I shrink again, the model size decreases. So it's responsive, which is quite nice. You can check the sizes from the documentation, how it looks. The double XL is probably full screen dialog. Then you have dialog with custom animation using this animate prop. Maybe they're using frame of motion, but I'm not sure. Then you can add dialog with a form, which I will show you later. Then dialog with image. If you click on this image, it will show you this dialog. Then you have Web3 dialog, long dialog, message dialog, then a notification dialog. And in the dialog props, you will have this. I've shown you the size, handler, then the animate, class name. Then you have dismiss prop, which I haven't shown you. So the dismiss prop actually listens for the backdrop change. The backdrop is this background. When you open this model, this blurred background you see. If you click on this, it closes the model. You can customize this using this dismiss prop. For example, you can use this enable key to turn off background click functionality. So let's add a dismiss prop. So enabled. To false. Now if I click on the background, it doesn't close the model. Then you have escape key. You can turn it to false. So by default, if you click on escape, then it will also close the model. I'm now clicking on escape, but it's not closing the model. If I comment this out, now if I hit escape, the model is now closed. You can pass more options like outside press events, and so on. I'm not going to go over them. Then the types are also there. The theming guide also here. Now let's talk about forms. If you go to the forms page, you won't find much information. There are some examples because there isn't really a form component. You have to use the form tag and you have to use the input component instead. So if I go to input, this is the main input component. You also have checkboxes and other stuff. So let's create a form in the code. We'll add a form inside this model. So I will add the code inside the dialog body. Remove this lorem ipsum text and import the components. If I open up the model, you see this beautiful form. So let's understand the code. Basically, we have this form tag. Then we have this input for getting the email. You can add a label prop, then the size, which is LG. Then you can add a placeholder using the placeholder prop. Then you have password. The props are kind of same. Then you have checkbox. And the checkbox accepts a label as a prop. And the label is this thing. I agree the terms and conditions, which takes actually a React node, not a React component. And it takes some props called container props. And then we have just added a button for sign up, which will just close the model. Let's see some of the customization in the inputs you can do. Let's change the size of the input. You only have two options, MD or LG. Let's add MD. Now our input is a bit smaller. You can have colors. Let's add teal. And if I focus, now the input color is teal. You can even pass input with icons using this icon prop. You have validations. Then you have example with input with a button. It doesn't accept any prop to add a button. You just have to manipulate it using Tailwind CSS or any kind of CSS. You can also pass your custom styles using the class name. let's see the props. So there are a bunch of props available, like variant size I've shown you. You can also pass label props and container props. The label props is for the label tag, and the container props for the input container. You have the types there in the input theme, the theme guide for the inputs, which will be helpful now because we're going to learn about theming. So what is a theme? A theme is basically a predefined set of styles like colors, sizes, box shadow, breakpoints, and so on. So when I added the components, the styles for the button or the input, I didn't specify the background color, the foreground color, the variants, the sizes, and so on. It was all defined from the start, and that is called a theme. And you can customize the theme using this theme provider component. Since this page component is already a client component, so I'm going to add the theme to this component file. However, you should create a separate file for the providers. So let's import the theme provider. You also have use theme hook. Let's check our current theme using this use theme hook. Just console log and call the use theme function or hook. And let's open the dev tool. And you see an object is printed. And here are all the components and their styles. For example, if we go to the button, you have 3 properties: the default props, the styles, and the valid. I will go over all of them. You can check the types from the documentation. Scroll down. So this is the theme object structure. The key names are going to be the component name. They will have 3 objects: default props, valid, and styles. So the default props is used to change the default props value for components. For example, you can change the default variant of the button component from field to outlined. Then you can add your own styles, or if you add any more custom properties, then you have to add them to your valid object, which I'll go over later. And they've clearly mentioned that the customization option of a component is added to the specific component page. And they have also added this class name prop. Basically, it says you can add your own class names or add the important modifier to change the styles. So let's go to the button page. Sorry, not button group, to the button. Let's go to the button theme. So it has default props, the variant, size, color, full width, ripple, class name, and so on. So let's add a theme. I'll just remove this dialog. I don't need it. Let's add a theme provider. Let's pass the value prop theme, and let's create a theme object. Let's add button to button theme. Oops, button theme, and let's create a button theme object. If you're not using TypeScript, you can explicitly import the type using comments like this. So pass add type, then curly braces, and just import the button style props from Material Tailwind /React. And now you will have auto completion, as you can see. So let's change the default variant. The default one is field. Let's add text. Now the variant hasn't been changed because I have already added a variant. So let's remove the variant prop. And now we're using the text variant. If I comment this line, now again we have the field variant. You can also change the size to LG. Now we have a bigger button. I also didn't specify any size prop. let's change the styles. Again, you have to go to the documentation. So the styles type like this. So you have the base styles, you have the sizes styles, variants, and these are also have keys for, so sizes have SM, MD, LG, and this will have their own objects, and you'll find the default theme for the button on the documentation. So let's change the size. I want to change the font size of SM, so I can add sizes, then add SM, which is another object, and now I can specify font size, padding, border radius, and so on. So let's add font size, and this has to be a class name, not any CSS unit. So let's add text LG. Now let's add a SM size. You see the text is pretty big. If I search for font size, it is using the text LG class. If I comment this line, now it is using a smaller font. But let's say that you want to add your own size. Let's say custom size, and you want to add your own font size. Let's say text 2XL, and let's change the size prop, custom size. Well, it's not working. The text is not clearly 2XL. It is using text XS. And the reason it is not working because we haven't added the custom size to the valid prop. So in the button theme, you have to add valid property. And here you can specify the variants, the sizes, the colors that should be allowed. You don't have to specify all of them. This valid object will be deeply merged with the default valid object. So let's add sizes, and let's add custom size. This should be an array, by the way. And now it is using text 2XL class name for a bigger font size. But I can still use the SM size, and it should still work. And it is working because the objects are going to be deeply merged. So that's pretty much about theming. I cannot show you everything. You have to go to the documentation, each component's documentation, to learn how to customize it because every component is different. And one thing you might have noticed that there is no dark theme. Well, sadly, yes, there is no dark theme in Material Tailwind. A dark theme will be available in their next major release, so you have to wait for that. I think it's a pretty good library if you like material design and also you love working with Tailwind. So that's it for this video. If the video has been helpful for you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you have any kind of question or any kind of feedback. You can also check out my other crash courses. The links are going to be on the description. You can also check out my other channel, DSA with JS, where I solve lead code problems. The link will be on the description. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter as @Aljon, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.